Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you all today. Wanted to welcome you into the podcast and just tell you thank you. Thank you for logging on, subscribing, watching, clicking, liking, sharing this podcast and the previous podcast episodes. It's our desire to provide great content for you, particularly if you are looking for content around nonprofit strategy, nonprofit leadership, and nonprofit fundraising. As you engage in this particular podcast, I'm going to ask that you take a moment to not only take notes as we get started, but also take a moment to share this particular podcast episode with someone in your life who you believe can benefit from this. This can be a colleague, this can be a friend, this can be a partner, it can be a stakeholder, anyone you think can benefit from good content around nonprofit stuff. With that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into our show, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Hey, folks, welcome into another episode of the podcast. This is Dr. William Clark. Glad to be with you guys again. We're live here in Clubhouse and on Facebook. And if at any time that you want to connect with us, go ahead and leave a comment for us there in the chat. We'll get back with you shortly. And today we're going to be talking about how contracts can accelerate the growth of your nonprofit. This can be a really positive opportunity for your nonprofit organization if you know how to work it. Even for the newbies, contracts can indeed add significant value to your ability to raise money today. And if you're new and you're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B, and you're trying to raise what we call serious money, six-figure money, contracts can be a way to go. So let's quickly jump into this. Now, contracts is one of several revenue opportunities nonprofits can tap into. Most people, when they jump into the arena or they're new to the nonprofit world, we think about grants as the only way to raise money. And I get why that's the case. It's because it's the known revenue driver for nonprofits, even for people who are not necessarily clear on how nonprofit revenue works, how income for nonprofits work. Most people think of and assume that the only way you can make money for a nonprofit organization is through bringing in grants. And the reality is there are multiple revenue sources that are available to nonprofit organizations. So one of them includes contracts. Now, what are contracts? Contracts are agreements between one entity and another to provide a service in exchange for cash, for payment for service, right? And we can talk about contracts from the view of your nonprofit, if it's able to qualify for RFPs and win an RFP competition with your state or your city or the federal government. We can also look at contracts as a mechanism that can be utilized in connection with other providers. And that's where I want to focus our time today. As we get started here, I want to welcome our audience in here from Facebook as well as Clubhouse. Glad to have you guys in the room. Would you go ahead and invite folks to be a part of this conversation? Now, when it comes to contracts, we have to think creatively about what it means to add a contract to our revenue source, and how do we qualify for it? How do we make it happen, even if you're a new organization? So the strategy I want to specifically cover today is around that particular topic. So let's kind of take this example. You're a new nonprofit, you're new to the industry, you're new to the work. You just got your 501c3. Hopefully, while you were waiting for your 501c3, you've gone through the planning process. You've gotten your core 4 documents together, your fundraising plan, your strategic plan, your master grant application, and your master budget. And now you're at the point where you're ready to start generating revenues and getting results. If you've done that planning and you've included the right people in the planning process, of course your board, but other stakeholders, and watch this, stakeholders who are doing the same work, it is possible for you to tap into opportunity, service opportunity, program opportunity, and revenue opportunity by way of the relationships you have to offer a service as a subcontractor to another nonprofit organization. So for example, let's assume you're in youth services and you want to add a unique twist to the services, a unique value contribution to the services. Now, you know that your nonprofit is not big enough or mature enough to perform all of the services. You know that you haven't been around long enough to have the respect of the community or the funding community, but you developed a successful relationship with another provider who's providing that specific service. that can be an open door for you and your organization to do a couple of things. Number one, it's an open door to serve, right? We're in this business to serve. We're in this business to meet a need. If you've launched into the nonprofit arena, or you've decided to become a nonprofit entrepreneur and you're not focused on the customer and serving the need of the customer, then you're in the wrong business, right? And I would venture to say that any business that you launch, for-profit, nonprofit, it's all about meeting a need. While we can focus on the selfish gain that can be gained from what we do, the reality is it's about service. It's about meeting a need, solving a problem. Now, as we focus on solving a problem with our target community, we have to understand the value that we're going to be able to add to that community, i.e., through a service, through a product, through a program, etc. If you're brand new, you just got your 501c3, and in some cases, it may take several years for this to happen, you're not going to qualify for what we call major funding opportunities. Major funding opportunities means funding opportunities that are competitive and that are sizable. So let's talk 25, 30, 50, $100,000 or greater. You're likely going to have to sit out a couple of years, build up the reputation, build up the capacity, build up the skill necessary to compete for those major dollars and to be considered a serious contender and provider. In the meantime, do you sit on the sideline? No. In the meantime, you continue to serve. How do you do that when you don't have revenue? You can do that through partnerships and subcontractors. Now, one of the myths newbies tend to think about is, well, if somebody else is doing similar work in my community, in my city, or in my neighborhood, I'm not qualified. I can't serve my community the same way because we're going to be in competition with each other. Yeah, being in competition isn't a bad thing. Now, it becomes a bad thing if you allow yourself and your organization to succumb to it. And in many cases, you're not going to compete anyway because there's an organization already doing the work who's been doing it for years. They won't view you as a competitor. They're just seeing you as another pop-up that's trying to take a piece of the pie. But for you, one of the goals I'm going to encourage you to think about is figuring out how to become a partner, a friend, and a colleague to other organizations who are performing similar services. Because the more you can partner with other organizations, the more you're able to put yourself in position to build brand reputation, brand recognition, and you put yourself in a position to be considered for opportunities, funding opportunities in the future. So now with this partnership, with this relationship, or with the subcontract, you put yourself in position to serve the needs of your community by way of this relationship. So the more you're able to serve the relationship of the senior or the majority holder of the contract, you end up solving the problem of your community, which is the whole point of your existence. But the subcontract also compensates you for the time you've spent serving. And as you build these relationships and you write these subcontracts out and you provide a specific service that your organization is capable of performing and delivering on, it starts to add up. So if you have a $100,000 contract that your partner has earned and you got written into the contract for 20% of that particular contract, that's $20,000. Now, for a new organization, where are you going to raise $20,000 in one shot? It's very difficult, if not impossible, for many new organizations to raise that type of money right out the gate. You're going to see organizations raise a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, or they raise a few dollars from their board. And many new organizations and new nonprofit entrepreneurs don't know how to string together fundraising wins. So raising $20,000 from a partnership is more than a win. It's super, super huge. So now when you start to put together several contracts, several subcontracts at that rate, that's focused on a service, and I want you to hear me good, a service, a thing that you do well, it starts to add up. So when you have $5,000, $20,000 contracts, there you go. You've tapped into what we call serious money. But it does require significant focus. It requires you to focus on delivering one service, not because you're limited, not because that's all you can do, not because that's all you should do, but because it's just smart business. If you can focus on just that one thing and build brand recognition off that one thing, it becomes super lucrative for your organization. And the lucrative results that you're going to receive is not just revenue for the organization, of course, putting you on salary and allowing you to hire staff and secure office space, but the revenue that comes in is all designed for one goal. Regardless of how big your nonprofit is, regardless of what the focus is, the revenue that we raise has one goal, one purpose. And that goal and purpose for all nonprofits should be to serve the needs of our community. That's it. Helping someone else go through their transformation, helping someone else experience change in a way that's sustainable. That's why we talk about raising money. That's why we focus on raising revenue. That's why we address this issue deeply in our fundraising masterclass, because this revenue allows you to solve problems for your community. And if this is why you got into this work, then the revenue you generate is going to help you do that more. But subcontracts are going to be the way to go. So let's go ahead and reset the room while we're here together. Going to encourage you to leave your messages and questions in the chat. Let's reset the room. We'll be right back after this. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, your host of the Nonprofit Funding Tips Club, and I'm glad to have you in the house with us today. And I'm glad to continue our conversations. In this club, we talk about nonprofit fundraising, and our goal is to simplify fundraising strategies for nonprofit organizations without chasing funders. And I'm super excited to have that conversation with you today. As you guys enter into the room and as you stay longer and engage in the content, a couple of housekeeping rules. Number one, if you want to have a conversation with me while the teaching is going on, go ahead and tap my profile and then tap the paper airplane to send me a message through the back channel here in Clubhouse. If you prefer to chat with me via Instagram, tap my profile again, scroll to the bottom, tap on my Instagram, a link there, and send me a direct message there, and I'll be glad to communicate with you through either mechanism. If you have a question while the teaching is going on, please raise your hand and let me know that you want to come to the stage, ask a question, and or engage in a conversation about your nonprofit and your fundraising goals. Lastly, if you want to schedule a free consultation with me, those consultations are free. All you got to do is go to DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, it's DrWilliamPClark.com. Click on schedule a free consultation, select a date, a time, and fill out the survey, and we will meet on the date and time that you select. I'm super excited to have you guys in the room, super excited to continue our conversation around nonprofit fundraising and everything involved with that. With that being said, let's get back to our teaching. Folks, welcome back. Glad you're hanging out with us. To our audience here in Clubhouse, to our audience here on Facebook, glad to have you guys. While we're going to take some questions and comments and reflections now live here in Clubhouse, if you are in Clubhouse and can't talk or come to the stage, I'm going to encourage you to send me a back channel message. If you are watching live on Facebook, go ahead and leave your comment. If you're listening to this as a replay here on Facebook or YouTube or our podcast, leave a comment and we'll get back with you. With that being said, let's go ahead and welcome Yusef. Yusef, welcome to the stage, my friend.
What's going on, brother? How are you?
Good, man. What are your reflections on this concept of utilizing contracts to generate revenue for nonprofits?
I mean, it really makes sense. I mean, it's the way many companies who provide services cut their teeth and get started. I mean, whether it be construction or consulting business, or I mean, I think it's a fabulous idea. And I really never thought of it like that, to be honest with you, not from a nonprofit standpoint. So I've learned something that I just never applied. And maybe it's because it's the type of nonprofit I have. You know, ours focuses on help increase home ownership in moderate to low income families. But it's funny because we use that concept even with our contractors. I have one major contract I deal with. However, we really do utilize a lot of subs, especially as subcontractors. And it's a way we also get the young brothers in the community involved kind of through our own kind of apprenticeship program. So, yeah, I mean, I just never really thought of it like that. So I'm very appreciative, actually.
Yusef,
you
were breaking up just a little bit, but we got the gist. Let me just say this to you. I'm so glad you mentioned this. Part of my backstory is inclusive of economic development, particularly with the focus on construction. you know. And when I was working for the city of Philadelphia, that's what I did. One of the things that was pretty clear was this: we would get a ton of complaints, Yusef, from a bunch of minority groups who would say, "Man, how come this particular organization received this contract?" I'm qualified. I'm an MBE. I'm a WBE. And for those that don't know what that is, minority business enterprise that's certified. Women business enterprise has been certified. They have veterans. They have disabled businesses that have been certified, etc. So how come this particular organization got it, but we didn't? And a lot of it came down to, Yusef, capacity.
Capacity. Yeah.
Man, listen,
I knew that, yeah.
you couldn't get bonded. You can't get bonded, can't get insured, can't get financing. So we have a almost $1 billion project going on, skyscraper going on, and you want the window contract, but you don't have enough bonding to do the windows at Mrs. Jenkins' house. Like, right. Come on, Yusef, right? So the smartest thing to do is possibly just maybe this is a novel idea, become the sub of a sub of a sub so that you can handle some portion of the contract. And before you jump in here, Yusef, the beauty of a subcontract is it doesn't matter how big your contract was. What matters is the resume you get out of this. It's like being an intern. If you do something cool and impactful, just even though you're an intern, the results of the project are equally yours as much as it is the person who was leading the project.
Yes. And yes. And this is so ironic, Dr. Clark, because I'm the son of a man who monitored projects starting back in the early 70s, working with Capital Development Board in Illinois. And so for me, I'm a diversity practitioner. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for years, but my father did it the old way, counting boots on the ground, so to speak. So yeah, this is fascinating.
Yeah, man. We did that too as a part of our work, counting the boots on the ground, counting the heads, man, for sure. But thank you for that, man. Let me ask you this before we go over to Amina. Yusef, as you reflect on what we talked about and the power of subcontracts for nonprofits, what do you think are some applicable ways you can make this real for your nonprofit? Because I think, what I've learned about you during the last couple of conversations we had, you're an entrepreneur in your own right. But how do you think you can apply this so that you can enhance the experience of your nonprofit?
Well, I think one of the things we can do for sure is that I know there are other nonprofits who provide first-time homebuyer programs, and it's easy for me to start speaking about homeownership, the ABCs of homeownership, and they usually want speakers to come in. So I know I can volunteer my time in that way. Just like you said, to give our nonprofit, especially since we moved to a new area, some visibility. I can also help nonprofits who do the same work identify banks who have CRA issues and help them align with them. I can start working with the contractors. I mean, yeah, now that you said it, yeah, I mean, it's kind of really endless. You know what I mean? Actually, now that you brought that to my attention, definitely.
For sure, man. There's so many ideas. So many ideas. Odims, we're going to get to you in a moment. Saw your question in Facebook, but let's go to Amina first. Amina, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. What are your reflections about our topic today?
I've kind of looked into it a bit because I was doing research into nonprofits because me and my mom wanted to start a nonprofit to help support single mothers in low income neighborhoods to help them with childcare and, getting into furthering their education, to provide resources like that. And initially I thought nonprofits, you didn't earn money from it, but then I learned that the people who owned and operated it can get the income and stuff. So I started to look more into it. So when I seen this title, I was like, perfect. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can listen and get some tips so I can understand how that sort of thing works more. I'm actually currently a business owner. I'm I would say TikTok famous, but the nature of my business, it wouldn't permit for me to be able to contract and get involved in serious things like that. But I would love to progress to that point.
Awesome sauce. So let me if I can just share something with you regarding the nonprofit structure. No person owns a nonprofit. Okay, you have founders, and that's it, right? So the reason why it's called a nonprofit is because at the end of the fiscal year, no one profits if there are any leftover revenue. So those leftover profits get poured back into the organization. Now, if you're a staff member of the nonprofit, you can certainly be on salary. You know, there's no limit or cap to that. Just like any other business, it needs to be reasonable and within the budget of the organization. But I believe that's what you're speaking of in terms of how you can be paid from your nonprofit.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm speaking of. And I wanted it to be based around like helping women because I noticed that there's a lot of women out there who are single mothers and don't have any education and don't have good childcare and use that as an excuse not to have a job. So I wanted to create something that I genuinely cared about. And I, of course, wanted to get a decent living off of it. I'm already making a pretty decent living now, but I wanted to take a different direction in my life. Like currently, I'm a loan processor at a bank, and then also I own my small business online, which honestly, I can't call it small anymore. I want you guys, if you have TikToks, I would like for y'all to search me up and follow me, which my products wouldn't interest you. But um, yeah, I'm just really here to listen more. So I don't have much to add to the conversation, being that I don't have much knowledge on it.
No, I totally get it. And like I said, it's possible to make that happen. And so one of the ideas I'll share with you in terms of how to serve single mothers who are what we call dealing with these high barriers being unable to access quality childcare. They're housing insecure, food insecure, transportation insecure, all the things that really limit one's ability to advance economically. You might want to consider launching a workforce development program, right? So those are pretty standard in the industry, and you can focus on serving the needs of single mothers, right? And the nuance of what you provide can focus on those high barriers, like you said, integrating affordable childcare or free childcare to these mothers, integrating after school care, integrating transportation to these jobs so single moms can get from point A to point B without waiting for public transportation, particularly if they can't afford their own personal vehicle. There are
Yep.
other
You're
program
hitting
types.
the nail on the head.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other variations to this, but this is just one example of how it can work. So I think there is space for you to focus on that. And certainly, if you just tap the link aside above my head and schedule a free consultation, we'd love to chat with you about that and how you can get that started. But there's more need for that. All right, cool. You have more?
Yeah. I think that you pretty much list out things that I was interested in having a nonprofit for, and also to preparing for interviews. A lot of these girls can't carry themselves very well. So, like resume building and, just pretty much an all around workshop for them.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna click your link, and I think I followed you on here. So
cool. I look forward to it. And as you're researching this, look up workforce development. And you'll notice everything you just mentioned, all the things you want to cover are typically covered in a solid workforce development program. And I think there is space for you to add value there to the women in your community. Odims, he asked a question. I'm starting my nonprofit next year. How can I get grants and set up fundraising? So once you obtain your 501c3 designation, you can begin to apply for community grants. Your Walmarts, your Targets, your Home Depots, they offer community grants for a couple $100. Sometimes they kind of creep into the low four figures, $1,000, $2,500, depends on what they're offering. And it's possible to land those funding opportunities there. If you want to get set up for funding ODIMs, and I share this with all of our members of the audience who's listening, there are going to be 4 core documents I encourage you to develop before you start fundraising. Those core 4 documents include your strategic plan. What's your strategy to serve your community? The second document is your fundraising plan. How much money do you need? Who has your money? And then how are you going to get it? Third document, your master grant application. What's the language that documents your programs and that communicates what you're trying to accomplish? And then lastly, your master budget. What's the overall cost associated with running your program up to and including all staff members, etc.? So Odoms, when you listen to this answer, go ahead and work on those documents. And if you need help with that, then I'm going to recommend you apply to become a member of the Nonprofit Fundraising Master Class. We have a cohort kicking off in a couple of weeks. And so I'm going to encourage you to join that. With that being said, I do thank you all for hanging out with me today. Yusef, Amina, Odoms, thank you for your questions, guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. We'll see you guys next time. All right, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark again. Thanks for hanging out with us with this during this particular podcast. And I hope that you got some value out of this particular podcast. Now, I want to make sure that we also close this podcast with some additional value. Now, we've created the Nonprofit Fundraising Master Class. This particular masterclass was designed by nonprofit leaders for nonprofit leaders to help you simplify your fundraising approaches without chasing funders. Now, if this is something that you want to engage in and utilize for your nonprofit organization, if you have been thinking about how to fundraise for your organization, you just don't know how to do it, if you're transitioning from one phase of fundraising to the next, or you're just trying to improve the fundraising capacity of your organization, then this particular masterclass may be the right fit for you. So if you want to submit your application and join our next cohort, then go to nonprofitfundingstrategies.com. Again, that's nonprofitfundingstrategies.com. For all others who want to just get on my calendar and chat a little bit about your nonprofit organization, we offer free consultations. So you can simply go to DrWilliamPClark.com to schedule your free consultation. Again, that's DrWilliamPClark.com for your free consultation. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this particular episode, and we'll see you guys next time. See you, everybody.